welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Fearing, the Badass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Why waste your liquid gold in a breast pad? Wear the BPA-free Milky's Milk Saver and effortlessly collect every last drop of milk while you breastfeed. You can wear it on the opposite breast while breastfeeding or pumping to collect the letdown. Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for the link and use promo code BADASS for 10% off of everything at Fairhaven Health.
Hey, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne. I'm your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder.
And we're going to talk about poop.
We love talking about poop.
Yeah, everybody's favorite topic,
is.
right?
I mean, when you become a mom, you are automatically obsessed with poop.
Oh, you're totally obsessed with poop. And then people ask you all the time, is the baby pooping?
Yeah.
What's the poop
What does it
look
look
like?
like?
Is this poop? You know how many people send me pictures of poop? Which is totally fine. But it's like, this is how bad the obsession. They'll be like, can I send you pictures? I have all these pictures of my baby's poop. I'm like, that's fine. Send me a picture. You know, it doesn't look right. It's got a weird color. This is happening to it. It looks like this. It's not happening frequently enough. It's, you know, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to specifically talk about constipation.
Yeah, well, that's the
big one that we wanted to focus on today was constipation.
Yeah, and that's where everybody starts to kind of get, a little. Because I feel like, I remember just always constantly being so nervous to open my baby's diaper. You know, it was like a present from someone you didn't know. You know, you don't know what's going to be inside of it. And I would just, there's so much anxiety around it. Oh my God, what's going to look like? Oh my God, what's in there? And I think the big thing, the scary thing is like usually, I don't know, like people get freaked out about green poop.
Mm-hmm.
And then constipation. Those are the big ones. Like, oh my God, it was really hard. What do I do? He's constipated. Oh my God, I have to stop breastfeeding and just give him water and prunes.
Please don't do that to your baby.
No, and people have some crazy, just like everything else, some crazy advice on what to do with a constipated baby.
Yeah. But here's the real down low on your constipated baby. If you are exclusively breastfeeding, which means you're not giving your baby any formula, no cereal, no nothing else. We're talking the first 6 months here, okay, or whatever, from breast milk to solids, that space in between. Babies do not get constipated if they're breastfeeding. Like, there's not even research on it because I've looked. Mm-hmm. It is not something that happens. It is not. Breastfed babies poop with breast milk. Like, it helps them, it works through their system. Mm-hmm. They just don't get constipated. But what happens is when your baby gets to be, after the first couple weeks, because the first couple weeks are pooping all the time.
It's so true.
And oh my God, it's crazy. So they're pooping all the time in the beginning, and then they start to slow down, and then they're pooping less and less. And they're pooping less because your breast milk is so bioavailable to their body that they're using so much to grow that there's less waste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there would obviously really be cool. So little waste with breast milk because it's just designed to go right inside your baby.
Yeah, and it's so cool. But people don't realize that, and they think, oh my gosh, my baby hasn't pooped in a day. Mm-hmm. It's normal. Like, we consider it normal for breastfed babies to go like a week sometimes. I've seen babies go longer than a week. Maybe they'll have like one big poop, and then 5 days later they'll have another one. And that is really normal. But people freak out, and they think their baby's constipated. And they're not. They're really not. But they end up calling their pediatrician, and the baby hasn't pooped in a couple of days. And what do I do? And the pediatrician says, give him prune juice. And it's like, why are we messing with this?
Right.
Because
there's really absolutely nothing better that you can put in even later when they can get constipated.
Right. I mean, and if you think your baby is constipated, if you really have it in your head, like, oh my gosh, my baby's constipated, and then he finally poops, and that poop is soft and yellow, or whatever color, soft and brown, or whatever yellowish, mustardy, orangey color it might be, that they're not constipated. If you have those little teeny tiny hard balls that they can't push out, that's constipation. And that will never happen with an exclusively breastfed baby.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
So people think that their babies are constipated just because they go so long.
Right. And I know we've talked about this with, I think with gassy babies. When we did the episode on gassy babies a few episodes ago. And we talked about how cranky and fussy babies can get. But that is because, and it sounds like they're straining, and that's why people think they're constipated too, because it sounds like they're straining. But they don't have the abdominal muscles to push out their poop. So of course it sounds like they're straining all the time. And they're not really. I mean, they're straining, yeah, but they're not constipated. They're not straining because
they're straining because they don't know what to do.
Right. They can't, they can't push things out. They just don't know how to do that. This is all a new sensation for them.
Yeah, like we feel a fart, you can just like push it right out. They don't,
like
like that push, that abdominal like squeeze that you do, they don't know how to do that.
No, they don't know how to do that. So, now they get subjected to things like prune juice. I've had moms go get suppositories and like all of this stuff. And they swear the baby's so uncomfortable. They need, it's not pooped. And people really get worried and nervous and so freaked out. And we had a dad that called the pediatrician's office that was like downright nasty. Oh. Because the nurse told him, well, the doctor said, that this is very normal, blah, blah. And he's like, you are wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. This is not normal. Something's wrong with the baby. Like very, very nasty about it. And it's like, no, I don't know what to tell you,
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I'm noticing here. So you have a new mom and there's a new baby and she's overwhelmed with anxiety about everything. And dad and parents are overwhelmed with anxiety about their baby. Just in general. And so now you have all of these places where this anxiety is going to manifest, right? We have it in poop, we have it in milk supply, we have it in all kinds of ways, which is what we're so anxious. And so it's going to come out in these places, right? And now we're like focusing. So if we just focus our energy on poop for a while, we are like, this is going to, I'm going to find an answer here to what's wrong. And if I can find the answer to what's wrong, I'll feel better. So people are like really, really want to find an answer. And I want this to be the answer because this is going on right now. And if you can just tell me that, yes, indeed, there is something wrong, then I will, be able, then there's a solution, then we can move on. Like if there's no answer and that's not the problem, we're just left with our anxiety flailing out there. It's so uncomfortable.
And it's so, babies are so abstract, right? Yeah. There's just not this whole solid, like, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then you're going to see poop. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And I try to tell parents early on, like, we don't poop the same time as our neighbor. Right. Like, we don't have the same pattern as that. Like, everybody's different, and babies are not any different than that. Like, they're going to be totally different, baby to baby, whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever their body does is what their body does. Right. So if your baby poops every 3 days, that's their thing. Like, it's just their thing. And it's so hard for people to wrap their heads around that. Like we want to be able to control everything that happens with this baby.
Well, and that's what anxiety is, right? It's like, it's being out of control. And so we're looking for control to kind of, to manage that anxiety.
And it's just, I wish there was a way to just like fix that for people. Well,
there is a way, and that's education, which is what we're doing.
True. That is what we're doing right now.
We can recognize feelings of anxiety in ourselves, and we can learn about our babies and say, okay, there's nothing wrong here. Maybe I'm feeling really anxious because I have a new baby. And, then we say, okay, so the baby's uncomfortable. And then we can't cover this. The baby's uncomfortable. The baby hasn't pooped in a while. And then we can say, oh, well, Dianne and Abby said that actually breastfed babies can go like more than a week without pooping, and that's totally normal. And that's because that there is not a lot of waste that comes with breast milk. These are not 30-year-olds that are eating Big Macs and French fries and Diet Coke. Like if that is there's a lot in that your body doesn't want or need. And so it comes out in like big, huge, long visits to the bathroom. But with a baby, doesn't need to do that.
Whenever I see a baby that is pooping a lot, like the mom says, oh my God, every time I change a diaper, there's poop. Every time, whatever. Those are babies where I also see oversupply symptoms. So the baby is getting tons and tons and tons of milk, and there is going to be excess there. with formula.
But it's not hard.
There's a lot of stuff in formula that they do not need. Or there's excess in formula because the baby's body doesn't absorb things well when it's formula. So they have to put in extra so that the baby can get what they need from it. So there is a lot of extra, and so they are pooping differently than if they're breastfed.
And so if you have a formula fed baby, then it's possible that is it possible then you might have some constipation issues?
Definitely, because it just doesn't agree with their system as much, it's not as easy.
And then what does that
so you
mom
have
do?
Babies. What
does that mom, what does the formula fed mom, I know this is a breastfeeding podcast, but a lot of us have had formula fed babies. And so what would a mom do for constipation with a formula fed baby? Are there then interventions that you need to go through?
From what I have seen and heard from mothers, they would do like the prune juice or the suppositories, but sometimes they would change formulas.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Too. So just to see if, maybe I need to go to something that the baby can digest easier.
Right. But
so that's, that's a problem.
Okay. But then if you have an exclusively breastfed baby and you suspect that your baby is constipated, we can say 100% that that's not the case. Right.
They're not constipated. And I think a lot of times the doctors say, or, other mothers will say, oh, just give your baby a little bit of prune juice. It worked really well for me. Because they want to give the parents an answer.
Yeah.
And the parents want an answer. But honestly, it's just the natural progression of your baby's body. There's no need to really intervene there.
Right.
And then it's a shame that you're putting prune juice into a baby that the system never had anything else before.
Right. And and then because then you're putting something in there that the baby doesn't need and can actually interfere with the exclusive breastfeeding situation.
Yeah. But we want answers.
Yeah, we do.
We want answers. We want to fix it. And it's just, it's not necessary.
Yeah. But I
in this situation.
I can see how that would be concerning and the newborn days are, a foggy memory now, but I'm sure that there are plenty of times where, one of my kids wasn't pooping and I was like, oh my God, why has it been so long since they pooped? That's not normal.
Yeah.
Because then
I remember worrying about that at one point. And I think it was my sister was like, yeah, because they use what they need and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, once you look it up, you can find that online. Like, if you look it up, you find it online. It says that very easily because, like I said, there's really no research behind it at all saying that there's constipation related to breastfeeding. But I think that's just not the answer people want.
No,
they want to do something about it.
Because they want to be able to have a solution to something. And if there's no problem, then there's no solution.
Right.
But I think that's where, I think that's where the education comes is that, people see their uncomfortable baby and it's like, oh my God, I need to do something to fix. I need to make them feel better. Right. Well, like when you were talking about the gassy baby episode and all of this, sometimes there isn't really a lot of things that you can do that what appears to be discomfort might possibly be discomfort because your baby's trying to fart or whatever, but that it's really normal. And, all you can go about doing is just trying to comfort them in, the normal ways that we do.
Right. And that's really, that's the best that you can do. And they'll poop. Like it won't.
They're not
never poop
right.
Again.
It's not going to, it's not going to come seeping out of their ears or anything. It won't.
But make sure you're doing a lot of tummy time though. Get those abdominal muscles nice and strong.
Yeah.
Help them work those abdominal muscles. Do the little kicking.
Yeah, the little bicycle wheels, bicycle legs.
That and like warm bath and stuff like that because they just if you think they're uncomfortable, those kinds of things can be distracting. And,
right, but that is not going to make
comfort.
them poop. If there's not a significant, if there's not enough waste in your colon, it's not going to come out. So if your baby is if there's just nothing in there to come out yet, it's not going to come out.
Yeah, and that is one of the things about breastfeeding that I always thought was so cool, that your body just uses all that milk.
Yeah, I know. That's amazing.
that's just, I think that's just so cool. And one of the doctors that I work with would tell mothers, like, when they would say, well, the baby hasn't pooped in a couple days, and you'd be like, is the baby passing gas? Well, yeah. And he's like, that's how much is left by the time it gets there. Like, there's nothing else left. Yeah. Like, you can consider those farts and, like, part of a bowel movement, because that's what's left.
And the urine. I mean, they will pee. They're continuing to pee.
Yep, they're still peeing a lot.
So that's where the waste goes. But they don't, it's not a Big Mac. So it's not coming out in a big turd.
No.
That comes later.
No, and they're just growing and developing. So we want them to keep that breast milk in.
Right.
We shouldn't need to, like, feed them more and all that stuff.
Just to try to get them to poop. Yeah. You don't want to create waste.
No.
Just to get some poop out.
No.
It's not.
Poor babies.
They're so confusing. They really are confusing. And there is, I mean, there is so much information that's missing, and I don't know, I know some of the answers, but there's so much information that's missing that creates all of this anxiety.
There's a lot of holes.
There is a lot of holes. And then the people, everybody is just left flailing. And then you're calling your pediatrician and you're like, he won't poop. There's a problem. Because we can't deal with, I know I can't deal with the whole, there's not a problem. We just got to ride this out. I can't deal. I hate that. I want problems and solutions.
Yeah.
That's how I manage
and I think that's
my anxiety.
I think that's why they get the prune juice solution.
Right.
Because and you want to, like, I feel bad telling a mom, like, there's nothing you can do. Yeah. I'm sorry if your child looks uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to say that to somebody. Right. You want to have an answer for them. But I think being able to tell them, no, this is really normal, and they will poop, and then you'll be sorry that you were asking for it because, now it's, like, not going to stop, but it's, you want answers.
And so, okay, so that's for the first 6 months of exclusively breastfeeding. So then most people, 6 months or even before, try not to do it before, you want your baby to be exclusively breastfed for at least 6 months. That's ideal.
Yes.
And that means nothing.
Nothing.
And then at 6 months, people start to experiment with solids. And, when we're doing this, we should do an episode on this, starting solids.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
But so when you do start solids, you will start to see some changes in poop.
You will.
So then
should we talk?
Yes, I think we should talk about that because people breastfeed. So we've talked about the first 6 months, but, now people breastfeed. I breastfed Jack for 6.5 years. He wasn't exclusively breastfed by the end. No. He was eating all kinds of things. I mean, he was eating everything.
Yeah.
But so breastfeeding includes, solid foods. And so then what do we do? If we're going to, what are some of the things that we're going to see when you start to, what are some of the normal things that we're going to start seeing once we start introducing solids to our breastfed baby?
Should we do our sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. With the Milky's Milk Tray, you can freeze your breast milk into 1-ounce sticks so you can thaw just the right amount of milk for each feed. Reusable and environmentally friendly, and can be used for baby food later. Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for the link and use promo code BADASS for 10% off of everything at Fairhaven Health.
Okay, so after the first 6 months, so you started solids. Sometimes people start them before 4 months or before 6 months, but really 6 months is where you should be. There definitely can be some constipation there. Some people will find that they started solids and maybe it was, cereal or whatever, and the baby's really having a hard time with that. They're not pooping. And you will see, like, there is an actual change in the poop. Like, when they do poop, it might be a lot thicker. You could tell it's not breastfeeding poop anymore. Now there's something added to it. And it stinks now. Yeah. So whereas before, breastfed poop was kind of like...
buttered popcorn.
All right. Yeah.
It smells like whatever, buttered popcorn.
And it's not terrible.
No.
You know, like it's like you can deal with it. But now it smells like poop. Now your life has changed. Yeah. So like, welcome to this part. Sorry about your loss. This is, you know, where your baby is at this point.
You're like, why was I complaining this whole time?
I know. You're so excited to start them on solids, and it's so fun, and your baby's so excited, and they're so cute, and then they poop, and you're like, why was I so excited? This is the worst thing ever. But that's where all the poop problems come in, because now you've got the solid foods, and that's where they struggle with it, because their system sometimes is not, especially if you start at 4 months or 5 months, because their system isn't ready yet. They're not ready for it yet. Right. So then I would start, and they always say, start with this. No, you should start with this. Start with the internet.
They usually, and this is what they always do. Your pediatrician will probably tell you to start with rice cereal, and that's garbage. I mean, rice cereal straight up is just garbage. You never ever have to introduce that to your baby. No, you don't. So what do we like to start with? I mean, just start with, fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. So you can start with fruits and vegetables. You can start with meats. If you want to, if you're feeding your child meat, you can start with meats, because it's, it's good protein. It's a good source of iron. At 6 months, now the first 6 months of your baby's life, they've taken all the iron they need in that first 6 months from you in that last trimester. Mm-hmm. So they're leaving you, ironless, basically, but they've got all their iron. So once they hit that 6 month mark, like the cereal is fortified with iron, and that's why some people like you to start with that, because then you're putting that iron back in. But if you're giving your baby things that do have iron in it, then that's good too. If you want to say, I don't want to do the cereals, then that's fine, but start with something that's a little bit iron rich. So you're getting, but that's a lot of stuff that's iron rich. Mm-hmm. So you can start with meats. That's totally fine. You can start with fruits and vegetables. And I kind of feel like fruits and vegetables, you're probably not going to get as much constipation. Yeah. I would think, right?
I think it's going to be easier because meat is tough on everybody's body to digest. But I mean, if you're doing that, I mean, I can see like, you're cutting little like chicken bites or something. I think they would like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think fruits and vegetables are like really easier for the body to digest. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, my kids liked bananas and sweet potatoes and something that was, kind of easy for them to just move around in their mouth, and they won't get a lot of it into their mouth. It's just for playing. They're trying to figure out how to move their hand from the food and even just make it into the mouth. This is all a learning thing, and this is where the next set of, I think of it. Well, we can talk more about this in our starting solids episode.
Yes,
but we start to get anxious that they're not eating enough and that they're, all this stuff. But I like the phrase "food before one is just for fun," and it's really just learning.
Yeah, and people ask me all the time, like, "Well, what happens to breastfeeding when I start my solids? Mm-hmm. Like, how does that?" Does breastfeeding, do you do more food than breastfeeding? When does breastfeeding go to being less? Mm-hmm. Are they still getting as much as they need? Like, it's a balancing act. Yeah. And it's funny because when I first started in this field 10 years ago, it wasn't like, I don't remember getting that question that much. I don't remember seeing it that much. But now I really do feel like there's so much more anxiety around what we do with our babies that moms are just really like looking at it and going, okay, what if I don't give them enough? What happens when I start solids? What food should I give them? Do I still give them as much breast milk? Do I still breastfeed them as much, even though I'm doing solids? Or do I reverse that now? Do I do solids first or do I breastfeed first? Which should I do? And it's like, oh my God, I never even thought about half of that stuff. Like, I never even thought about it. My biggest concern was that the poop was changing. Yeah. Like, seriously, I didn't even worry about the rest because it just kind of like, but your baby they're gonna get what they need, and I wouldn't expect them they do not need a lot of solid food from the beginning, especially like you said, like the food before one is only for fun. So the first, like if you're starting solids around 6 months, really like 6, 7, 8 months, you're not doing much of anything. Like their whole diet is still basically breast milk at that point, you know? And then maybe like 9, 10 months when they can actually pick things up and they've got more teeth, maybe, possibly, or, you know, whatever. Then they might be into doing a little bit more eating, or you might be doing more, having them at the table and you're doing actual meals with them, and 10 months, 11 months, 12 months, stuff like that. But in the beginning, a lot of it is just like textures and feeling it and putting it in their mouth and, you know, playing around with it.
Yeah. And I feel like we bump up against the cultural norms here too, because Jack, my first, he didn't really even eat very much solid foods until he was like 2. He really wasn't. And, you know, we just don't see kids breastfed for that long. So it's like, oh, you know, then the pediatrician's like, oh, no, you know, you can't do that. They need to be eating, you know, 3 solid meals a day. And, you know, it's like, okay, you know, I'm giving him food. You can't force feed anybody. You know, he really was really into nursing. This was like something that was really, you know, what he wanted to do. And the solids were, you know, it took him a while to get used to it. And, you know, there's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can't force feed them. You know, and if you're offering it and you're letting them play with it, they're going to eat it. Eventually they're going to just be eating it.
And, you know, babies are very sensory. And sometimes, you know, that can be a good thing, but sometimes that can also work against them.
Yeah.
So, you know, we might be thinking, oh my gosh, why is my baby not eating this? But it might be that they don't like the texture.
It's just totally weird. It's totally weird and new. Yeah.
You know, and things like one of the dietitians, a friend of mine, she does like she talks to parents when they're starting salads and things. And she always tells them to start like, okay, give pureed carrots, but make sure you also give a carrot that's a little bit harder, you know, like because you want them to have those different textures and you want them to have things that have different feel to it, maybe, you know, cut differently or whatever, because they should be experiencing all of those textures too.
Yeah. So when you start solids at around 6 months, you will start to see changes in your baby's poop.
Yeah,
that's going to happen.
Yeah, you might start seeing that constipation setting in at that point. Whereas before, okay, maybe they were just going a few days and then pooping. And most moms have told me, okay, the baby slows down with pooping, and that's usually around maybe 6 weeks to 2 months. You see that sometimes earlier, sometimes later. You know, don't like put it in stone or anything, but usually right around that 6 week mark, 6 weeks to 2 months, and then. Most moms will tell me, oh, no, the baby will poop, and then it'll be maybe 3 days, and then I'll get a big poop, and then maybe 3 more days, and then I'll get 2 poops, and then I'll be 2 days, and then I'll get 1 poop. Like, they know. Yeah. Because the baby then starts to get more, like, regulated.
Oh, my God. I just had a massive flashback.
Oh.
Oh, my God. I just flashed back to our nursery upstairs, which we never ended up using for anything except a diaper changing room. But I bet you I could find this. I bet you I could find this and take a picture of it and we could put it on our website. I had a poop log. We had a poop log for Jack. And we would write down the date that he pooped and what the consistency of it was. Like it was, you know, green and soft or yellow and mustardy. And we would keep track of his poops.
How long did you do that for?
A really long time, and I don't even remember why it started. It started with our poop obsession, our total anxious poop obsession. Oh my God, Josh will totally remember this. I have to find it so I can post it and show you guys.
You'll have to find it. And it's like in the beginning, you bring the baby home, you go to the pediatrician. Even in the hospital, it starts where they're like, okay, mark down the poops and pees, and that's important in the beginning because that tells us, okay, the baby's getting enough to eat,
right,
you know? And that the poop's transitioning and, you know, the jaundice and all that stuff. And then you start your pediatrician appointments and maybe the first couple appointments will ask about pooping and peeing. And because it does tell a story, you know, it tells us what's going on. But then usually once you're past like a month or so, nobody really talks that much.
Right.
I mean, they might ask you, but it's not as important.
Yeah, they're basically just weighing your baby each visit.
Yeah. It might be just they want to make sure the baby does poop at some point, but they're not like, okay, what does it look like? What color? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. So I remember with my kids, like starting to keep track of everything. And then I got to the point where I was like, I cannot even do this anymore.
Right. You kind of, it times out. Sure.
Yeah. But that's my personality. I'm just kind of like, whatever. Now, I have had families that track every single thing that happened in their baby's life for the first time. Like, I remember this one mom like coming to me with a notebook and the baby was 6 months old. and she had every poop and pee and every food
my God.
written in this little book for 6
Yeah,
months.
I can see
and
that.
that was her comfort zone. That's what she needed to do. And people have these apps, and with the
there's all
diaper
kinds of
logo, and
apps
it tells your, and it's like, that's fine if you need to keep track of it for your own sanity. But I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to do that either.
Right.
But your baby's, like after a while, that got too tedious for me.
Yeah. I mean, eventually we stopped, but I do remember that. And I remember thinking after a while that we were nuts. And knowing, knowing that we were nuts, to begin with. We have an anxious little first child to prove it. But yeah, I mean, that's so funny. I don't think I've thought about that ever since.
Oh my God.
This is a total...
Yeah, you'll have to find it.
I have to find it.
Because I would love to know how long you did it for. It's just, these are the things we get obsessed with, though.
It is. And I remember, I even wrote a blog about poop. I still sell on my blog. I wrote a whole blog post about poop and how obsessed with poop I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You do get obsessed with it.
Yeah. But, okay, so exclusively breastfed babies are not going to get constipated. Your baby's working out. They're working out that abdominal stuff, but it's not a big solid poop in there that they're trying to get out.
It's not. You do not worry about it. Do not even let constipation run through your head.
And once
it's not happening.
Yeah, but once they start solids, that's also something that's totally normal to happen.
Yes.
And I think that you can help with a lot of this stuff, with the abdominal stuff, is, breastfeeding on demand. Continue to be breastfeeding on demand. So breast milk is good. And you want to do this for all kinds of reasons. You want to do it for your milk supply. You want to do it, just so that the baby's getting absolute most breast milk as possible. Because there's no solid food that you're going to introduce that's going to be more nutrient dense and beneficial than breast milk. So just because you're supposed to be just because, they say you can start solids at 6 months, it doesn't mean that you have to then start shoving solids into your baby's mouth. Like, the best thing is for your baby to still get as much breast milk from you as possible. And I think that can help keep things pretty smooth too. If you're getting all of this breast milk as much as possible, and then you're kind of just adding in there some fun playtime with food, you introduce it real slowly, and the chances of them getting constipated are going to be a little less.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Whenever moms would say that they started solids or they, introduced formula or something like that, and maybe they didn't completely transition to formula, but they just introduced some, it's like, well, then get more breast milk in there. Mm-hmm. Because that's the thing that's going to flush everything out. It's just going to make it better. So it's, it makes your baby's body react more naturally to things.
Yep. It'll help flush it all out.
Yeah. So that is our poop story. Our constipation story. And we'll have to do one on solids at some
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of crossover with this.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's on there. I wrote it down.
I wish I never was introduced to solid foods. That's like
the
root of all evil, solid foods.
I wish I was
just need to be on a liquid diet. I know.
Okay, well, leave us a review on iTunes if you can, please. We would appreciate it. And make sure you head over to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for sponsor links and all of our other episodes.
Yeah, you'll love it. Our new website.
It's awesome.
It is. It is awesome. Just like our podcast.
Just like it.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.